Thank you for joining us. You are here with Poets and Quants Thought Leadership Series, How to Ace Your MBA Interviews with a Spotlight on Storytelling. My name is Heather, and I'm the head of growth and student success at MBA Protocol. I'm the former chief operating officer of Poets and Quants, so this is like a homecoming for me. I'm super excited to be here with you, and especially with my longtime friend, partner, and colleague, Angela Guido. Angela is she is a Booth MBA. She has been a longtime friend and partner to Poets and Quants as the MBA careers expert. She's a favorite and top MBA admissions coach. She's a veteran admissions coach, and she's the founder of Career Protocol, with MBA Protocol being the MBA admissions arm. We focus on transformational professional development while getting you into B school. Angela is the former head of recruiting at BCG and KPMG, and she is a best-selling author of this book and others, but Interview Hero: How to Ace Your Interviews and find and direct the narrative of your life. Angela, can you please kick us off with telling us more about your career and how interviews and storytelling became an integral part of how you work with applicants and job seekers?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So you just did the executive summary. And by the way, I wasn't the head of recruiting at BCG. I did recruiting at BCG. I had a couple of different titles, but head of recruiting, that was a promotion. I didn't quite do that job, but I recruited MBA. So let me focus on that, because when I was in business school, I decided I only wanted to recruit for management consulting. And I was really unqualified because before my MBA, I had been an English teacher in South Korea. And then I had worked at KPMG doing HR and training and recruiting. And none of those really prepared me for a career in management consulting. I had never really used Excel, for example. So when I went into the interviews, I didn't get a summer internship. I did get 2 full-time offers from BCG and McKinsey. And the difference between the two was not the case interview. It was storytelling. It was how I answered questions about my experiences and projected executive presence. And that was something that I had really invested a lot of time in over that summer, learning how to do. And so that was the beginning of my obsession with storytelling and with interviews, as like even a, fairly unqualified person like me can convey like competence through communication. That was like a light bulb. And then later in my time at BCG, part of my job was to help the firm recruit more women. And BCG, Bain, McKinsey, all these firms, they have what they call an objective bar. So it's like they're not going to hire more people just to have more people of a certain class if they don't clear that bar. So my job was to get more women over that bar. So I went around to all top MBA programs and I led interview workshops for like women, also diversity candidates, and then also men. Like I ended up training everybody in how to go through BCG's interview process, and I did case interview workshops, but I also did storytelling workshops, and those were the ones that people would leave the workshop and then call me when they got the offer and be like, that's why it was the storytelling workshop. And so there's a lot more to it. Like I studied screenwriting after that. I really, really got obsessed with stories. But the core foundation of my coaching practice since I left BCG in 2009 has been helping people understand and communicate who they are so that their career and the world and their managers and their employers can really meet them at the point of their greatness, so that you're being interacted with from the best that's inside you and you're being promoted based on what's best about you. The decisions about do you move, do you stay, are being made because people really understand where you're great, where you're actually doing something differentiated and special and powerful. And that's all communication. That's it. And it's like once you get out of your MBA program, communication is going to be 80% of your job. So that's why I have focused here for the last 17 years.
So we talk a lot about communication, but it starts with knowing yourself. So you say, know yourself, communicate that brilliantly.
Mm-hmm.
And so how much of let's say an interview is about knowing yourself first, making sure it's authentic, because we do a lot of talking about your authentic voice too. So can you
Hmm.
actually just give me an example of how that would work when you're working with an MBA applicant or with a job seeker on finding your authentic voice and sharing that? Like how do you go about finding that?
Yeah, it's a rich question. I think the first thing I would say is that finding one's voice, let's call it that. That feels a little bit fluffy, but I think it's an accurate expression. It's like finding within yourself the power and the confidence and ability to be yourself in the boardroom, in a team meeting where everyone's yelling at each other, like in all the places where you're going to traffic as a professional. It's about being yourself, being true to yourself, upholding your values, embodying what it is that's important to you. That's kind of what when I think about finding your voice, it's that, because your voice is what will carry. It's what people will listen to, it's what they will follow, it's how they will connect with you, it's how they will empower you to do the things you want to do. And so finding your voice is, in a way, it's like a never-ending journey because you're always evolving. But how we one of the things I still love working with MBA applicants after all these years, and one of the things that I love the most is that when you're writing an MBA application, you're writing a ton of essays. There's the resume. There's even some influence that you have on recommendations, and then of course there's the capstone of all that, which is the interview. And so over a period of many months, we're slowly cultivating this deeper understanding of who you are. What are your authentic differentiators? How do you communicate that with confident humility so that it's both inspiring and not at all alienating? Like, arrogance is the enemy of anyone who wants to lead. So it's really about bringing yourself forward. And that's an iterative process of looking within, communicating, see how it feels, see how it goes, try again, and so forth and so on. And you're always going to be working on your communication skills as long as you're a professional, as long as you're a person, really. I mean, I think what percentage of successful marriages are communication? It's like, really, you have to live in this world with other people. You got to be able to communicate. And so, yeah, so the MBA journey, the way we do it is rich because you get this long runway to like discover and practice and really build up that inner confidence that you know who you are and you know how to make anyone understand that.
Right. All right. Well, so then bringing that into, so these are interviews. So now we're in this environment where everybody's using automation, everyone's using AI. So we can all be good writers. We can feed it through Chatty or whatever we use,
Mm.
humanizers and everything else. But then there's the interview. So this is the most personal part, whether it's Zoom or video or in person. So I guess this would be key, right? Being able to, you can fake it only so much. So do you have any tips for people? Let's pick the high achievers first.
Mhm.
During an interview, how do you balance being confident, being grounded, and not being arrogant? Like, how do you do that?
And what's the other type?
The
Because
other
I
one,
think the answer is going to be the same.
yeah, okay. The other one's going to be the people who are questioning, am I worthy? Can I sit at this
Mm.
table? And so maybe they actually, you're right, maybe they overdo it because they don't feel worthy. So they,
Right. So arrogance and defensiveness kind of read the same. The interviewer, if you're defending what you think is a weakness, or like trying to excuse it or trying to convince them in spite of that weakness, versus if you're coming across as arrogant, it's the same emotional response on the part of the interviewer, and it's not a good one. It's not a good response either way. So the answer for everyone, really, and this is the one of the cool things about communication is, although your way of telling your story and the ideal story for you to tell will be different from absolutely everyone else, the rules of storytelling are absolutely universal. And so, either way, whether you like it's yours to lose because you're a rock star, or you feel like you're coming in as an underdog, the approach to conveying who you are has to include both the light and the shadow. It has to include where you've excelled, where you've shown, where you've really brought some magic to the table, and it has to include the times when you couldn't peel yourself out of bed in the morning because you weren't sure you were going to make it through the next day. because things were falling apart, or you were an emotional wreck, or you were full of anxiety, or whatever it was. And that's not to say you're going to overshare those moments, but you have to bring the challenge into the discussion. It's while humans are all different in our joys, we are all the same in our suffering. So that's how you build an emotional connection with the audience, is by letting them in on your slice of the human suffering pie that you've experienced in your life authentically, like, without excusing it, without being a victim of it, and without seeking pity, but just being like, yeah, whew, that was hard.
Okay.
And here's how I got through it. And here's who I am today.
Well, and we didn't really talk about this in advance, but it's a fine line to walk when you're
Yeah.
emotionally connecting with the person. So where, now how do we walk that line where we want to connect emotionally, but we don't want to overshare?
Yeah. So
So,
this part, so there's some questions that when I'm asked, I give you the framework, I got the answer. I'm like, do this, do that. This is how you do it. But there are some questions where it's like, I can't tell you what to do, because nothing I say will mean anything until you get in and try to find your voice. And then you have to have an emotional reaction. So this is why this iterative process of storytelling that we take our clients through is so valuable, because you test one version of the story and then it's like, that doesn't feel good. Like when the reader reads it, they feel pity for you, which is not a positive emotion. Like when the reader feels pity, that's a negative emotion. That's not what you want. You want them to feel inspired. You want them to feel uplifted. And so emotion is a very subtle thing. It's like watercolor. There's not a rule to nail it. So this is where the experimentation process, and really like trying it one way, trying it another way, and just finding that sweet spot where you're talking about something challenging, but you're doing it in a way that creates an inspiring response in the reader. That's what you're aiming for. And you can't always know that when you do it yourself.
right.
And so it's happened so many times that a client will send me a draft of something. This happens around the community where it's like they submit a draft and I'm like, this is it. And we read it and we're like, oh, no, that's not it. That is not it. Here's why. Let's discuss. And then you have to keep going. And these are the times where having a mirror, having a coach, having someone to help you understand not just who are you on the inside, but how are you connecting with others on the outside. It's hard. I don't think it's possible to do it without a person. And as good as AI is at all the things that AI is great at, and I am a huge, I'm afraid of the future of humanity as a result of AI, just like everybody else. But I'm a huge fan of especially ChatGPT, and I think it's miraculous the things that it can do. But there are pieces here where it doesn't have feelings. You need someone with feelings. You need an emotional entity to mirror you.
Right. So if I was going to distill that for advice for the people watching or the people who might find us on YouTube that don't have that person, I think then we have to think when we're doing interviews for MBA admissions or for
Mm,
jobs that the emotion that we're trying to connect with is inspiration. Do we want
yep.
them to feel? So it's the end emotion. What do you want them to feel? We don't want them to feel pity
Yeah.
or grief or sadness or guilt.
Right.
Inspiration.
It's inspiration. And then in the middle, you want them to feel compassion and commiseration. Because like I said, we've all been there. Like whatever story you're going to tell. If I ask you, tell me about a leadership experience or tell me about a time you overcame a challenge. I may or may not have been in that exact challenge, but whatever you went through, any person, if you tell the story right, any human being of any background will relate. They'll be right there with you in the trenches. And that's so the way emotions work in a story is that you take them down into that moment where things were dark, and then you bring them back up. And so we all get to experience, like anyone who hears that story gets to experience our own version of the triumph of the human spirit, because even though we weren't part of that story, we have our own story and you're bringing it to life. And so we're sharing this, like, this is gonna sound really like woo woo, but it's like we're sharing this deeply profound connection between two beings who've like we've shared an experience, and whether I'm relating to my own story and then connecting that to you, or if I'm relating to you in your story, either way, we're connecting at a pretty profound level that is unique to humanity. Animals don't do this. This is unique to us. So you're looking to like connect with them and to be relatable, for them to see you through their own eyes. And then by the time you get to the end of the story, we want to feel like, we made it. You did it. Yes.
So basically you're following a story uh, profile, introduction, compassion, inspiration, or possibly, but revealing something about yourself, something authentic about yourself, after
Mm-hmm.
having already gone through a process of figuring out who you are, what you want, where you're going. And then
Yeah.
you're across the table, you're sitting across the table from somebody who is the gatekeeper for that thing that you want, whether it's admission to that school or the job that you want to get or the introduction to the recruiter of the job that you want to get.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you. So I guess with AI and with automation and with the degree that I think that I suspect people are using it in their admissions, then storytelling becomes even more important. So outside of that, do you have any tips or advice, or could you share with us, maybe frame differently, common mistakes that people make during an interview process?
So many, so many.
Let's
So the
jump
first one really,
jump to the third.
jump to the third.
Common pitfalls.
Well, the first two are quick. So the first one is ignoring everything I just said. Trying to look perfect, trying to look perfect, like trying to keep it like, yay, sunshine and rainbows and puppy dogs. That will fail because it will feel inauthentic to you and to them, and that won't work. So that's the first pitfall. The second pitfall is using the STAR framework. I hate to say it. So, um, what I discovered in my storytelling adventures is that the most important part of the story is that middle part where things are hard. That's the most important part. And you have to get really clear about it. You have to reflect on the details. You got to really know how to do it. And the STAR framework, almost any interview framework you'll learn, doesn't address that. It's like action. The action is what you do in the middle. And action is fragmented, it's distracting, it's too detailed, and it's boring. You need that section to be governed by the conflict. So I have my own storytelling framework. It's in the book that Heather showed you, and we teach our clients that framework for storytelling, because it allows you to bring out your vulnerable humanity without oversharing and without like crossing any boundaries. It's just one authentic human to another. And then the third pitfall, and this is related to the first two, is failure to sufficiently reminisce before you go into the conversation. And I say this because stories are made of details. It's like a story has to be told in a way that, like, if there were a fly on the wall, they could observe the story. There has to be action, there has to be place and time and dialogue and other people. And for the most part, we don't remember what happened. So my first year of internship interviews during my MBA, as I mentioned at the beginning, I interviewed with Bain, BCG, McKinsey, and I did not get a summer internship with any of those firms. And the big mistake I made, and I realized it as soon as I got into the interview room, is that I hadn't taken the time to reminisce and to remember the detail. I was like, I had my resume in front of me, which I had just revised like 800 times, and I was like, oh, I know what I did. I know my resume, but the resume is telling a different story. It's not talking about the rich experience. It's just sharing the highlight reel of when you were victorious. So there's all the rich details behind the story that will not be top of mind. So the best thing you can do, once you've figured out the framework for storytelling, you know the stories you want to tell, then you have to really reminisce. And that's like something you do in an armchair on a Sunday morning with a journal. And you just project yourself back, and it's like, what happened and who said what and where was I sitting when I got that news, and really make it real for yourself in the details, because that's what makes a great story when you tell it.
Okay. Well, before I go on here, I want to actually just remind people that are here to use the Q&A box for questions, if you have specific questions. And also, I would still love to hear where you're at in the world and where you are at in your MBA journey or your career search. So you can type those in the Q&A, and we'll pick those up and answer them. So Angela, I mean, one of your most successful articles is about Zoom interviews. Can you share with the crowd, how to take this information, put it in, or some tips on Zoom interviews? It's just especially challenging.
Yeah. So I think there's
Over to you.
two big ideas. Two big ideas. One is get the right camera setup. Like, so I have this is a little bit different. I've got like a serious camera. This is not a webcam. This is a very serious camera. I've got light, I've got 3 points of light. And I'm wearing something that's comfortable. So it's like, and then notice how my head is like right. So this is like cinematography. This is what I learned in my days of filmmaking, of like how you frame a shot and how you light a scene. And so it doesn't have to be fancy. You can do it at home, but you need a place where you can set it up so that you know that you look good. You want the camera kind of just at or just above your eye line. You want to fill up the screen. Uh, Creating that scene will immediately increase your confidence and comfort, because you know that whatever you could control, you did. You controlled everything and you got it to where you look good. They can see you, they can hear you, make sure sound is really good. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, then, and this is maybe a counterintuitive point, don't worry about their emotions. And this is true for even in an in-person interview. There are so many people who think that the right way to test a candidate is to give them a poker face during the interview. I think this is just an insane interview strategy, but there are people who do it. And so whether they're doing that or not, you'll never know. And if you hinge how you feel about yourself on the feedback the other person is giving you, verbally or non-verbally, you're very vulnerable to tanking at any moment. It's like you're riding a breeze when you do that. So instead, during the conversation, focus on your enthusiasm for the content of what you're sharing. And this is why all the steps we've already talked about, getting to know yourself, exploring your story, figuring out how you're going to go down and then come back up, make it all really real for you, so that when you're talking about it, you can really get into it, and you can be enthusiastic and you can be alive no matter what's happening on the other side of the screen. And then the interviewer will have the experience of connecting with you. There will be a lot of other components to it, but that gives you the best chance of achieving that all essential. Like, and this is really, those of you who are applying to business school, MBA interviews, it's really two things. Is your English fluent enough? That's number one. It's like and it doesn't have to be perfect. It does not have to be native. You just have to be able to present yourself in English. That's number one. And then number two is, do you have executive presence? Can you bring yourself forward in a way that's defined? Do you have a personality? And you can have a big personality or a kind of quiet personality. Doesn't matter. You just have to show yourself. And they have to have a certain degree of comfort in your executive soft skills.
Okay.
And this is why our process of preparation is so valuable, because by the time you've gone through all this, finding your voice and iterating and telling your story, you really know who you are, and you can project a level of confidence that is not false. It's
Right.
just genuine, and it's quiet, and it's real. And so that's the second tip.
So you mentioned executive soft skills, executive presence and soft skills. Can you talk a little bit more about what that means for anybody who maybe doesn't know, how do I show executive presence? What do I need to work on? What are the soft skills that I should be focusing on? Because a lot of people think it's one thing, it's many. But
Mm.
can you talk to us about that?
So I think I kind of alluded to this earlier. I may have even said it this way before, but I'll say it really clearly. I think executive presence, executive soft skills are having the skills to be true to yourself in any professional context, while still connecting and achieving your agenda with your audience. That's what it is. It's like being able to inspire people, being able to motivate them, being able to engender confidence in your abilities, being able to pitch something and have people buy into it,
Right.
being able to show up in a room and have people like want to talk to you. And humans are drawn to authenticity. So when you're being true to yourself, you're going to be your most charismatic, full stop. And you have to be able to communicate in different ways in different environments. You know, if you're in a boardroom with all CEOs and you're the junior consultant on the team, that's a very different context than if you are the senior ranking member of the team. And so it's just this like emotional intelligence, the sensitivity, and then the flexible communication skills to be able to resonate with anyone in any environment while being yourself. That's what I think it is.
And that's what really you've based the last your career on. Actually, you have a story, Angela. Can I call you out for a minute and can you share your story? Why are you doing this? Why do you do what you do?
Which story?
One story about how you ended up landing on career protocol, happy at work, and MBA protocol.
So
Being a
because
need.
there are a couple of different things I could say. I mean, I feel like in a way I kind of answered it early because in my days at BCG, I just personally found it rewarding to help people grow and to have all my energy focused on that. I was kind of bored helping businesses sell more boxed cereal and acquire medical devices. All the work I did as a consultant was frankly just really boring to me. What was interesting was watching the little BCGers grow and become better consultants and better communicators. That's always been really, so there's that selfish motivation of like I enjoy helping people develop. But what I would say when this became like a life mission for me, maybe I think is what you're asking is um it relates to what I think the MBA makes possible. And that is and this has been true for me and pretty much everyone I know, our clients, my friends from business school. When you add that particular degree to your profile, it opens many doors through which you can find your way to make the mark that you're here to make. So my business has really always been about empowering the leaders who are driven by values and a desire to make the world a better place for others. And I think that the MBA really facilitates that. If that's your ambition, the MBA makes all kinds of ways of having an impact and making a difference possible. And so our activities at Career Protocol, MBA Protocol, Happy at Work have always been about taking those people who are like, I'm gonna do something great on behalf of my fellow humans and giving them everything that we could to help them be as successful as possible. Because I don't know if you've been paying attention, but the world really needs kind and compassionate leaders right now more than ever. And that's what we're here for. That's why my companies exist.
Great. Well, thank you. And I know now that I'm here, the process that goes into helping people achieve all of these things that we're talking about, going from, an MBA applicant to somebody who, just someone different, than the next level of
Mm-hmm.
self-awareness, knowledge,
Yep.
and having that be put in front of the admissions committee or put in front of a recruiter and having that person really want to be your champion for that position, that seat at school, or for that job. So there is, I think, a component of relating, maybe not so much networking, but that's an interesting topic too. Actually, networking is making, real human connections with people,
Mhm.
that you and I previously have talked about a lot with the Poets and Quants audience. But let me go back to interviews for one second, because there's comment. I don't know if we went. I'm unsure of our audience because we're at Poets and Quants. So I'm assuming that they're applicants, but we did say any interview. So common questions that someone might face on during a live interview or a Zoom or video interview. Can you throw out a couple common questions that people may be asked during an interview?
Yeah, so for MBA interviews, there's a pretty circumscribed set of questions. And for professional interviews, especially post MBA professional interviews, that range goes like this. There's like way wider range. Most of our clients who we're coaching post MBA are going through 5, 6 interviews, before they get an offer, maybe even more than that. So you kind of have to be ready for anything at a certain point. But the most core questions that come up, of course, are like, tell me about yourself, walk me through your resume. That first big summary opening question, which I think most people squander. I think you don't want to just punt on that. You want to really own that moment and take that chance to really show the interviewer what you want them to see and what you want them to focus on about you, which again is the result of like the work to figure out what's different and special and unique about you and to really put that forward in that first question. And then you're going to get questions like, tell me about a time. So these are the behavioral questions where they're trying to gauge your behavior, your priorities, your motivations, your character. They're really trying to understand what kind of a person are you, and they're going to do that by drilling down onto one or more actual experiences. And this is where storytelling is really your best friend, because the more detailed you are in the way you tell the story, the better. So true story, the framework that we use to coach our students towards their MBA essays and towards their MBA interviews, I began developing in my McKinsey interviews during my MBA. And it was this, like, because McKinsey interviews, if you haven't been through them, can be brutal. It's like they'll be like, tell me about a time you solved a problem under constraints. And you'll give this like elaborate story, and they'll interrupt you and they'll ask more questions, and they'll be like, well, yeah, but what about this? And like, tell me about that. Because they're looking for specific information about your character. And so going into my second year of interviews during my own MBA, I was like, I'm going to do this in such a way that I don't get any questions, because I know the framework. I've mastered it. I've figured it out. And I'm going to tell a story that doesn't get any interruptions. And I did it. And then I developed that framework, and that's what I taught, to other applicants to BCG. It's what we teach to our students. And so that, like, how have you solved a problem where you're being asked to tell a story? You're going to have 5, 6, 7 stories ready to go and be able to tell them from different angles, because if the question changes, the answer will have to also change. And then for MBA interviews, at least, there's that big set of questions, which is like, what are your goals? Why do you want to go to business school? Why our school? That's another set of questions that's very important in MBA interviews. And the equivalent is, why do you want to work at our company?
Right.
Or why do you want this job? And I actually did a recent MBA. I did a recent video about this on my YouTube channel, using Blake Lively as an example of what not to do.
Oh, right, right, right. Is that on MBA Protocol at YouTube or?
That's on Career Protocol, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so,
Kind of a fun experiment.
so you have several stories for several reasons, right? So you have to go through this process of sort of a mini life audit and come up with stories and examine them from different angles. So that, so the question, like tell us about a weakness. This is like a standard job interview question, right? So in your sort of inventory, you'd have your success stories, you'd have your failure stories. What's the best way to frame, like, how do we answer this question? Tell us about a weakness. How can we turn that into a winning answer?
Yeah, so I think the place where you win the most points in an interview is when you're talking about the dark side. When you're talking about a weakness, when you're talking about a failure, when you're talking about a setback, when you're talking about a negative piece of feedback that you got. That's where we differentiate the men from the boys, so to speak. Sorry for that very gendered example, but that's where you go from being like, okay, this person is, pretty qualified, to like, okay, I actually want to work with this person. Because to err is human, as they say. There's not a single one of us that has gotten to the point we're at without making a whole lot of mistakes. And so any business school, any company is looking for people who are resilient, who are able to pick themselves up, learn from a mistake, move on, and grow. And so these are the moments where you really make pay dirt in the interview. And so if you're talking about a weakness, I always want to like reframe things. It's like a pathology that I have. So the first the way to reframe a weakness for yourself is to understand that there's no such thing as an objective weakness. There's no such thing as a weakness in a vacuum. There's only a weakness against some wanted outcome, some goal that you have. So it's like the fact that I can't run 26 miles is not a weakness for me because I have no desire to run a marathon. But if I wanted to run a marathon, then my cardio strength would suddenly become a major weakness, right? And it's like if if you're going to join a company or join a business school where your self-management is going to be tested every minute of every day, the fact that you can sometimes be disorganized and scatterbrained might become a weakness. If you want to be a painter, that's going to be a strength, actually. So it's to always think about in what context is this thing that I'm going to talk about a weakness? Against what objective is this thing I'm going to say is a weakness? Against what objective does it count as a weakness? And then think about what does it mean for your ability to achieve that objective and address that as well in the answer. So you put forward the weakness and then you say, but here are all the other things I'm good at. Here's how I'm working on that. Here's how I'm seeking to improve upon that. Because ultimately what matters is not the weakness itself, it's the objective and your ability to ultimately achieve the objective while growing in the process. And that's just what it means to be a human. That's just life. So there's nothing dramatic there.
So, frame of reference, always frame of reference. Like, where am I going? Who am I answering? Who's my audience?
Mm-hmm.
So even painstakingly identifying in your storytelling, examination of yourself, the weaknesses of, is it a weakness here? So if I'm not the best, I want this job, but I'm not the best candidate for this job. Well, that's a weakness.
Well, you probably wouldn't know, first of all, whether you're the best candidate or not, because you don't know really what they're evaluating. You know what the job description is. So if you want to make it really tactical, you look at the job description and you see, what have I done before? What have I not done before? And what on this list, if I am put in charge of this tomorrow, am I actually going to feel nervous about? That's a good place to go for a weakness.
Okay.
So it's like your job is to XYZ. And you're like, ooh, I wasn't very good at XYZ in college and I haven't really done it since then. So that's probably going to be a weakness.
Okay.
So you go to that and then you show self-awareness, but also capacity for growth.
Okay.
Because that's what they're looking for, really. They're not looking for you to self-flagellate. Like, it's never about you beating yourself up while someone else is watching. It's about them understanding your character. How does this person grow? How does this person navigate uncertainty and incompetence? Because we all have moments of incompetence. That's guaranteed. What are you going to do when that comes up? That's what these questions are really about. It's about resilience and growth and triumph, not failure and weakness. That's just the story hook.
Okay. So for folks who, myself included, get really nervous for interviews or being like this morning on a camera, do you have any tips, any grounding advice for people to do, any prep work that they can do to ground themselves before they head into an interview?
Yeah, just meditate every day for the rest of your life. That's my advice.
Okay.
Meditation. There's no better answer than that. Learn how to breathe and meditate. And meditation is a habit. It's not like an insight. It's not even a skill. It's just something you just do. And if you do it long enough, you will not be nervous. And if you are nervous, it won't matter. But if there's one like immediate tip, if you've got an interview tomorrow, a way to boost your confidence pre-interview is to have a copy of your resume handy and go through your resume and remind yourself how awesome you are before you go into the interview. And the thing you want to focus on is not the achievements. It's like not that you're better than someone else or that your GPA is strong or you went to a good school. It's none of that. It's nothing that can be compared to someone else. It's about the intention behind what you did. It's about the values that you served en route to those achievements in your resume. It's what you're committed to. It's where you've dedicated your time and energy. And when you get aware of that, you cannot help but feel good about yourself and your life because it's like I cared about stuff and I gave everything I had. And like what more can I do as a person? And then you go into the conversation and it's like I am what I am. I'm happy to bring that to this party. Let's go.
Well, good advice, Angela. Always good advice. I'm cheating. I have this book, which I didn't intend to talk about today, really, but Interview Hero, it is a great book. So if you guys want to hear more from Angela about interviews, this book, it's Interview Hero. I'm going to read the title properly because I kind of botched it in the beginning, but it's Interview Hero: How to Ace Your Interviews, Find Your Voice, and Direct the Narrative of Your Life. So this webinar wasn't meant to be a pitch for the book at all, but however, your frameworks that you talk about, that we were talking about, are in here, and you're led through these exercises. So for all of $16.95, you can get it on Amazon. You can also join the conversation with us at MBA Protocol, or watch our YouTube. MBA Protocol, I don't know, our channel name,
Just
Angela?
MBA protocol.
Just
Yeah.
MBA Protocol.
MBA protocol.
And Career Protocol.
Yeah.
So you can interact with us there or watch more, get more tips on careers and MBA applications. I do recommend the book though. This is very, very handy. I actually even use this, Angela. I didn't tell you this, but I use this with my teenage son when we talk about going for interviews and sort of looking at life stories, how to frame them, how to talk. So this is a really, really, really good book, and also talks a lot about friendship and networking and making connections, because during an interview or in the course of your everyday life, the people who care about you will champion for you the hardest. So really, you got to care about other people. You've got to be likable. You've got to have something to offer, whether that's the skill, but hopefully it's combined also with
Having something to offer is the easiest part, though. Everybody has something to offer. It's knowing what you want to offer. That's hard. Yeah.
So sort of syncing this up for folks that are listening or watching, basically, storytelling is going to come from a place of deep self-exploration. You're going to do an inventory. You're going to take inventory of your big life wins.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to take inventory of your failures. You're going to frame them in a way where you are honest with yourself about who you are, where you've been, and the outcome, and maybe how things could have been different, how things could have been avoided, so that you have talking points for any interview that comes your way, whether it's admissions committee or internship or post MBA career, or just for the non-MBA folks out there, just a job. And then other key takeaways is we want the interviewer to identify with us emotionally, not too much. And the emotions that we want are to inspire, is inspiration. Inspiration, compassion, then inspiration. What else, Angela? What am I missing? How can we wrap this up for folks?
Let's see. That was a lot. We covered a lot. We even talked about how to do a Zoom interview.
How to do Zoom interview. Video
Yeah.
interviews, I think, are a little challenging, but I'm assuming you'll have prompts. You'll do the same. You'll go through the same
It's the
thing.
exact same thing. You just want to be enthusiastic, even if you're talking to a dead screen. It's the same idea.
Angie, I'm going to answer live again, but I'm also going to type the answer for you so you can have it and copy and paste it. But it's Interview Hero by Angela Guido. And the subtitle is How to Ace Your Interviews, Find Your Voice, and Direct the Narrative of Your Life. Hi, Hannah. Do you think going in person for interviews are preferred or can help if you're able? Hannah's got a question about should she go in person?
So, it's kind of up to you. I think going to when they invite you to an on-campus interview and you have the option to go and you go, it's good because you're actually meeting people, you're networking, you're going to campus, you're like hanging out on campus, you're talking to people. If it's an alum interview, you're having coffee, you're shaking hands. You know, we're tactile beings. We like to be in the presence of other people. So it's generally a better experience to go in person if you can. And it does to some extent, like if it's a matter of doing it on Zoom or traveling to campus, it does show a little bit of commitment if you're like, okay, I'm gonna fly over there. Um, but that doesn't mean that not flying is gonna hurt you. It's more that it's actually a better experience for almost everybody to meet in person. And you may be the opposite of that. You may be like, well, actually, I'm kind of weird in person and I'm really good on the Zoom. Then do that. So bottom line is the right approach is to all of this is about being yourself. And if you're someone who feels actually better behind a Zoom camera, then do it that way if that's an option.
Awesome. Thanks, Angela. We've got another question here. Any advice on how to approach coffee chats with individuals at firms you'd like to work with? Is it a different approach than with interviews?
Yeah, very different approach because an interview is going to be kind of like a grilling. You know, they're going to sit down and they're going to drive. They're going to ask all the questions. They're going to tell you what they want to know and they're going to expect you to answer their questions. In the coffee chat, you're going to drive. You're actually interviewing them and you're not interviewing them for like, you know, a job. You're interviewing them for their experiences, for their advice, for insights into the company that you're interested in working for. So you have to do the heavy lifting of coming up with interesting questions that you actually want to know the answer to and that give them the chance to really expound on their experiences, to give you advice. So in a way, you're still trying to create a connection. You're still trying to create an emotional connection. But in this case, you're going to do it through listening, through asking good questions and listening as opposed to through speaking. And you'll still introduce yourself, you'll still add some things to the conversation, but for the most part, you're going to be the one listening and they're going to be the one talking. And that's a very different skill and frankly an even more important one.
Yeah. And also, just to add to that, because this is kind of what we used to talk about a lot, Angela, and I love this part of the process, because it's about deepening relationships with people and learning how to listen. But also, just for anybody who is applying to business school or newly admitted or is about to be newly admitted, when it comes to recruiting and campus visits and from recruiters from firms and everything, please talk to attend as many coffee chats and treks as you possibly can. Please take this time to explore your career options before you make a decision that can affect the rest of your life. So have as much coffee as you can handle with different firms and really
Get into decaf.
explore different industries. Just why not? Just
Yeah.
explore. Take the time and use this as an exploratory adventure for yourself. It's sort of like you get admitted and then you think you can stop and relax for a second, but I'll only give you like a day to do that. Rest for a day, celebrate, take yourself out, relax, but then pick it right back up and start getting ready for the recruiting process because it's really important. Hannah's got to go. Thanks, Hannah. Thanks, Hannah. We'll see you in the community. We love you. Kirash. Kirash asks, regarding interviews that have pre-essay, example, the MIT Sloan interview, which has an essay about data presentation, how would you advise on handling the question regarding that in the interview? Describe the data or chart your graph about DEI essay pre-interview. Any advice, please, and thank you. Can you see that question, Angela?
I can see it. Yeah. So this is do it right. Do a good job. So they're just looking for, can you communicate information? Do you have an intuition about information? And then with respect to the DEI essay, it's really just about, are you considerate? Are you thinking about other people that are different from you? And so the second one is a storytelling exercise. You need to tell a story about supporting other people, and that's a story just like any other story. And then the data chart graph question that MIT asks, it's really just gauging your comfort with handling and talking about information. But for most of you applying to business school, that data or chart thing should not be challenging. Like even if you consider yourself not quantitatively inclined, I guarantee you can read a chart related to your own work. So then you just got to find a graphic or a chart that has some meaning for you and explain it and do it in a way that is intuitive and clear for you. It's a different style of communication because you're no longer talking about yourself, you're actually talking about information. So you're switching from like um, communication that connects to communication that informs and persuades, which is totally different. But that style of communication should be second nature to all of you who are applying to business school. Even if, like, that would have been intuitive even to me, never having done a real business job pre MBA. That's the easiest part, that one.
Great. All right, one more. I'm going to read it out loud for people who are watching. I know you talked a lot about authenticity. If your post MBA goals are likely to make it more difficult to get admitted, this is a great question we get all the time. Do you still think authenticity in interviews is the best approach, or would it be better to present a plan that is more likely to get you accepted?
So that presupposes that you know which plan is going to get you accepted, which is a lot to assume because there are different answers for different people at different times in different schools. And the plan that will get you accepted always has to have some authenticity within it. So you might put forward a post MBA goal that is just one of a few options that you know could potentially be interesting to you, but it better be interesting to you. When I talk about authenticity, this is what I'm talking about. It's not like being like, yeah, I definitely want to go into finance because I'm going to Wharton, when nothing could be further from the truth. You hate finance. Like that will fail in every way because people are really, really good at detecting lies. And even if they're not good at detecting lies, even if they can't say, like, this person isn't telling the truth, it won't resonate with them. Like, they'll read it and they'll be like, all right, next. Maybe we'll interview her. I don't know. Whatever. When you say something that's real and that has some real passion behind it, even if the specifics are vague, that are not clear, there has to be something that you're reaching for post MBA that's real. And that thing doesn't have to be a job title or even an industry. It has to be a style of impact, a way of engagement, a way of leading, an opportunity. And there has to be something in there that's really, really real. And then the rest of it you can sort out and kind of triage vis-a-vis, the market and the school and all the rumors that you read on the internet. But if you just put down the thing that feels safe and correct, at least with the very top schools, that will have the opposite effect that you intend. Because either they will see through it and ferret that out in the interview. And let me tell you, the worst case scenario is that you get caught having lied or been inauthentic. That is immediate rejection. So they'll either figure that out or they'll just be like, yeah, all right, she's okay. And you will fail to have really made that connection.
Before we go to the next question, there's two things Ursula, I need a minute before we close, to thank you guys, but also, Angela, I feel like we don't have enough time to do like the why exercise with this group. But the last question that you were answering, it's kind of like, when you're applying to a business school or job interview, it's like, if you answer the question why that you think is going to be most in line with what the school wants to hear, you're going to be like 90% of the other candidates. But if you can keep asking yourself, go deeper and deeper and deeper to the point that makes you truly unique, and there's genuine alignment with your goals with that school, then I think you have a winning approach. But there has to be
Yeah,
genuine alignment, and there has to
good.
be.
And that's, you're making the point of like, this is how you are differentiated. Because whatever you think you're supposed to say to the school, guess who else has access to that information? Like, you are not unique in having done your research and thinking you know what the school wants. Everyone has done that. Even ChatGPT can give you that answer. But that has nothing to do with you and what's unique about you. So if your goal here is to really stand out, you have to drill down, because the further you get into your interior world, into your motivations, into your fears, into your hopes and dreams, That's where you are truly different from the 8 billion other people on this planet. And that's what you got to show. And that's why storytelling matters, because that's how you convey that information. It's not on the resume, it's in the story.
Well, thanks, Angela. We got one more question from Kirash. Respectfully, can the interviewee change something written in his application on the interview, like somehow altering the short-term goal in the interview? So it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks to me like you're saying, if I said something in the written form, can I change my
Hmm.
answer during the interview?
It depends. Like if your understanding of your reality has evolved and you're now thinking about a different path and you want to share that, that can work. If you if at any point you're doing it just to kind of game the system, that probably won't work. But you know, people change, things evolve, and you can bring new information into the interview if you do it in a sort of circumspect and respectful way. Absolutely.
All right. Well, I'm going to leave a couple more seconds for any more questions. Angela, if there's anything else you want to say, I'm happy for you to close. I just really want to thank the team at Poets and Quants. I want to thank Poets and Quants in general for all the work that they do. Thanks for
Mm.
having us today to talk about this topic. I want to let folks know that the book we're talking about, Interview Hero, is available
Hmm.
on Amazon. We are available simply by Heather at mbaprotocol.com and Angela at mbaprotocol.com. We're here for you, or just visit the site mbaprotocol.com. And please keep up with your readership at Poets and Quants. We love them as a resource. They're our good friends and family. And
John actually wrote the introduction to that
oh,
book.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah. John's name is on that book. When you go to Amazon, you'll see Angela Guido and John Byrne. So,
Guido and
yes,
John.
thank you so much to Poets and Quants for having us here. I love nothing more than to talk about this stuff to the people who are going to go on and change the world. So, thank you all for being in this conversation, for being here, for listening, and thanks Poets and Quants for having us.